I thought I knew everything about my family, about my parents, my sister. I sacrificed everything for them, believing the love and loyalty I gave would be returned. But when they passed, everything I thought I knew was shattered. The truth about my family, the inheritance I was left with, and the betrayal I endured, it was more than I could ever have imagined. But nothing could prepare me for the secret I was about to uncover. The truth was darker, deeper, and more unimaginable than I ever thought possible. This is the story of how I was left with nothing and how everything changed. Hi, my name is Emily. The phone call came in the dead of night, like a cruel whisper in the dark that shattered the last semblance of peace I had ever known. I had spent the last few years living with a quiet promise, one I had made to my parents, to myself. They had given me everything when I was young, and now, as they aged and their bodies betrayed them, I would return that love with the same dedication. I was their caregiver, their constant companion, the one who never left their side. They trusted me, and yet, the voice on the other end of that phone call told me that trust was meaningless in the end. The voice was calm, professional, detached, even. It was the lawyer, of course. My mother had passed only weeks ago, and my father's frail body had given out last night. But that wasn't what he was calling about. No, he was calling about the will, the one thing I never imagined would tear me apart. I had expected my parents to leave me something, a token of their appreciation, a nod to the years I had spent sacrificing my life, my future, my happiness to care for them. They never asked for it, of course, but I gave it freely. I thought that one day they would leave me with something, a house, a ring, perhaps a note of thanks. Instead, the lawyer's words twisted the knife deeper with every syllable. Your sister, the lawyer began, has been named the sole beneficiary of their estate. I blinked, my mind struggling to understand the words. What? I whispered, my voice barely audible as the cold air in the room wrapped around me like a vice. My sister, yes, the lawyer confirmed. She has inherited everything. I could hardly breathe. My sister, the one who had never once visited them, who had abandoned them for her own life, for her own comfort, years ago. The sister who had lived in another state, far away, too busy for a phone call, too important for even a holiday visit. She was the one to inherit their fortune. She was the one who had been chosen. I had spent countless nights at their side, keeping vigil by their beds, making sure they had everything they needed, ensuring their days were filled with love and comfort. I had watched my father wither away in front of my eyes, listened to him cough and wheeze in the dark, holding his hand as he whispered about his regrets, his past mistakes. I was there, always, but it was her, the one who had left, who had lived her own life without a second thought for the people who had raised her that they chose. I could not process the betrayal. I didn't want to. I didn't want to hear any more about it, but the lawyer insisted, his calm voice explaining the details that seemed to drown my every thought. She was the one to receive their house, their savings, the things they had worked their whole lives to build, the things that I had helped them with, the things that I had put my soul into. Tears stung my eyes as I sank to the floor, unable to move, unable to grasp the reality of it all. All those years spent with them, my parents, who I had loved so deeply, whose every need I had anticipated meant nothing. Nothing. The lawyer's voice continued to echo in my mind long after he had hung up, his words lingering like an unbearable weight. I had nothing. I had been nothing but the servant, the helper, the one who gave everything and received nothing in return. As I sat there on the cold floor of the living room, my father's old recliner staring at me from across the room, I tried to understand. Maybe I had done it all wrong. Maybe I had put my heart into something that was never meant to be reciprocated. But how could I have known? They were my parents. I was their daughter. I was the one who had been there when no one else was, the one who had cleaned up their messes, who had made their meals, who had sat in waiting rooms for hours on end, hoping for a miracle that never came. How could they have left everything to her? My sister, the one who had never been there, the one who had walked away from all of us. I stood up, my legs unsteady as I walked to the window, staring out into the dark, rainy night. The house felt empty, so empty. Every corner I looked at was a reminder of my sacrifice, my loss, and now it was all in vain. I could feel the bitterness building inside me, choking me, clawing at my throat. I wanted to scream, to shout, to demand an explanation, but there was no one left to explain, no one to hear my pain, my betrayal. They were gone, and I was left with nothing but memories and an empty house full of unanswered questions. How could they do this to me? How could they leave everything to her, the one who had abandoned them, the one who had chosen her own life, her own happiness, while I had given up everything for them? What did I have to show for it? Nothing. Nothing. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was realizing that, even now, even after all that had happened, I still didn't understand. I still didn't understand why they had chosen her over me, why she was the one to inherit it all, the one to carry the legacy, the one to benefit from the years of sacrifice and love I had poured into them. And that, I think, is what hurt the most. The never-ending question that gnawed at me in the silence of the night. The first few days after the call felt like a fog, a haze I could not escape. I moved through my routine, doing the dishes, folding clothes, taking care of things that seemed meaningless now. The house I once thought of as home had turned into a prison, a cold, hollow structure that echoed with the sounds of my grief. Every room, every corner felt haunted by their absence. I could hear their voices, faint echoes of laughter and love that had once filled these walls, but now all that remained was silence. I had been the one who stayed. I had always stayed. When my parents needed help, when they needed someone to look after them, to keep their lives together, it was always me. I had been the daughter who didn't get to leave, the one who couldn't. I had built my life around them, or rather, I had let my life shrink to fit their needs. The years of sacrifice, the years of putting my own dreams on hold, all of it had been for them, and yet it didn't matter. I remember the first time I realized my sister was not coming back. It was years ago when I was still a teenager, just beginning to understand what it meant to care for someone who could no longer care for themselves. My mother had been diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. The doctors said she could still function, still remember things for a while, but I knew that it wouldn't be long before I would have to become the one to hold the pieces of our family together. I was 17, on the verge of leaving for college. My sister was already settled into her life, married with a family of her own in another state. I thought that when the time came, she would be there. She always said she would be there. She promised. But promises can fade, like everything else. I watched as she faded from the picture, her calls less frequent, her visits even less. I was the one who stayed, the one who answered the phone when Dad needed help with his blood pressure, the one who drove Mom to doctor appointments, the one who made sure their lives continued to turn. But my sister, she was too busy with her life, too busy to be there when it mattered most. I had to be the one who stepped up, who kept the pieces of our family from falling apart. I did it willingly, even gladly, because they were my parents. I loved them. But somewhere along the way, I began to resent the fact that I was alone in that. I resented the way my sister had built a life for herself, while I had to put mine on hold. It was hard not to be angry at her for abandoning them, for abandoning me, angry at myself for never questioning my role. But there was no time for anger. My mother's disease progressed faster than I had expected. She began forgetting more and more small things at first, like where she put her keys, then bigger things, like who I was. The person who had spent her whole life caring for me had become a stranger, a woman I no longer recognized. It hurt in ways I could not explain. Watching her slip away from me, not just physically, but mentally, felt like losing a part of myself. In the midst of all this, I continued to take care of everything. I cooked for them, cleaned for them, managed their finances, made sure the house was in order. I watched as their health deteriorated, as the lives they had built with such care slowly unraveled. But the worst part was when I realized that I had become invisible to them. The woman who had once been my mother, my strong, loving mother, was gone, and in her place was a woman who didn't even recognize me. My father, once so vibrant, had become frail, dependent, and silent. I took care of him too, even when he couldn't remember the things we used to talk about. I became the one they relied on, the one they needed, and I gave them everything. I gave up my own life, my own dreams, for theirs. I never once thought that my sacrifice would go unnoticed, that it would mean nothing. But as the years went by, I began to realize something. My sister was gone, and in her place was a gaping hole where love and family should have been. And now, as I stood in the aftermath of their death, I understood all those years, all that effort, and my sister was the one who had been chosen. She was the one who would walk in and take everything. She had left me to carry the weight of their decline, their deaths, and now she was the one who would take the inheritance. The thought of it twisted something inside me, something sharp and painful. She had taken it all, their memories, their legacy, their love, and I had been left with nothing but the hollow echoes of my own sacrifice. It wasn't fair. I had been the one to take the brunt of their decline. I had been the one to hold it all together, while she lived her life untouched by the chaos of our parents' fading years. I sat alone in the house, the silence pressing in on me, suffocating me. The furniture that had once seemed so familiar now seemed foreign, like it belonged to someone else. The pictures on the walls, the small trinkets they had collected over the years, were all reminders of the family I had once known. But now, they were just remnants of a past that had been ripped away from me. The emptiness was overwhelming. I had no one to talk to, no one to share this pain with. My sister had abandoned me when I needed her most. She had never even cared enough to come back, and now, she was taking what should have been mine. I walked through the house, touching the things they had left behind. I could still smell the faint scent of my mother's perfume in the bedroom, the smell of Dad's aftershave in the bathroom. The house was filled with memories that would never fade, even though the people who had created them were gone. I had nothing left but their things, their possessions, and now, I was being told I didn't even deserve those. As I stood there in the silence, I felt something inside me break. The love I had given, the years I had sacrificed, all of it meant nothing. They had left everything to her, and I was left with the emptiness of it all. The days after the lawyer's call felt like a blur, a wave of emotion that had swallowed me whole. My hands shook as I tried to make sense of everything, but nothing made sense. I had been the one to take care of them. I had been the one to shoulder their burdens, their pain, their sickness. I had given up my life, my career, my friendships, all for them. And yet, when they were gone, when their bodies had finally given out on them, it wasn't me who was left with their legacy. It wasn't me who had earned the right to carry their memory. No, it was her, the sister who had abandoned us, who had chosen her own life over her family. The betrayal twisted in my chest like a knife that refused to turn. I thought of all the years I had spent taking care of them, years that had slipped by unnoticed, as if they meant nothing. I thought of the moments when my father could no longer walk without my help, when my mother forgot who I was and needed constant reassurance. I thought of the nights I had stayed awake by their sides, watching over them, comforting them, even when I was exhausted, when I was falling apart myself. All of it, every little thing I did, had been for them. And now, I was left with nothing. As the days passed, I tried to distract myself, tried to do something, anything, to take my mind off the hollow ache that consumed me. I cleaned, I cooked, I went through the motions of life, but it felt as if I were living in a world that no longer belonged to me. The house that had once been filled with their presence was now nothing but a shell. I could feel their absence in every room, in every corner. It was unbearable. But then, something happened. The lawyer called again. This time I was ready for whatever news he had to give me. I had prepared myself for more disappointment, for more injustice, but what I did not expect was the revelation that came next. "You should know," he began, his voice steady, that your parents had left something behind for you, a final gesture. They had something in mind for you, something they had kept secret. I felt my heart race, hope flaring briefly before it was quickly extinguished by the fear of what was to come.
Wait, what do you mean?
I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though it trembled with a mixture of anger and desperation. The estate is not as it seems, he said, his tone now more careful. Your sister is the primary beneficiary, yes, but there is a provision for you in their will. It's a complicated situation, a complicated situation. My mind raced, but I couldn't wrap my head around it. What could they possibly have left for me after everything? After the years of sacrifice, after the abandonment, after the betrayal? I was supposed to be content with whatever scraps they decided to throw me. I had nothing. I had given everything, and I had nothing in return. Go on, I urged, my voice barely a whisper. What is it? The lawyer hesitated for a moment, and then he told me. They left you the house, he said. I blinked, my mind struggling to process the words. The house I had lived in, the one I had cared for, the one that had been their home for decades, the house I had cleaned, repaired, and maintained while my sister lived in comfort, in another state, away from it all. Why would they leave me the house? I asked, my voice breaking. Why not the estate, the money? Why not anything that would matter? It's not just the house, the lawyer said, his voice a little quieter now. They left you a debt, one that you must take responsibility for. A debt? My heart sank as I realized what he was saying. They had left me a burden, a weight that would destroy me just as easily as it had destroyed them. A debt that my sister was somehow exempt from. A debt that had been hidden from me, buried beneath layers of secrecy. I could feel the anger rising inside me, hot and sharp. The debt was taken out years ago, the lawyer continued. Your parents borrowed money from a private lender. It was meant to be a short-term loan, but as your mother's illness progressed and your father's health deteriorated, they fell behind. Your sister was made aware of the situation, but she chose not to help. I was silent for a long moment, my breath coming in shallow gasps. It wasn't just the betrayal. It wasn't just that they had left me with the house, the symbol of my years of sacrifice. It was that they had known about the debt, and they had kept it from me. They had kept me in the dark, had allowed me to care for them, to suffer for them, without ever telling me the full truth. Why didn't they tell me? I asked, the question hanging in the air. Why didn't they tell me about the debt? Why did they leave me to deal with this alone? The lawyer sighed, and I could hear the pity in his voice. They didn't want to burden you. They thought you had enough on your plate. I had been carrying their entire lives on my shoulders, had been the one to pick up the pieces of their shattered health, of their aging bodies, and yet, they had thought it would be too much for me to handle the truth, too much for me to know that I would be left to carry their debt alone. I felt my chest tighten as I struggled to keep my emotions in check. The anger inside me bubbled to the surface, threatening to spill over. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout at him, at them, at my sister, at the universe, but I didn't. I couldn't, because I had nothing left. You're telling me that my sister knew about this debt? I asked, my voice cold now, steely with the weight of my rage. Yes, the lawyer said. She knew, and she chose to stay away, and that was it. That was the moment I realized the full extent of the betrayal. My sister, the one who had abandoned us, had known everything. She had known about the debt, about their struggle, and she had chosen to walk away. She had chosen to live her life without a second thought for the family she had left behind. And now she was the one who would walk away with everything, leaving me to deal with the wreckage of their lives. I hung up the phone, my hands trembling as I tried to steady myself. The world felt as though it were collapsing around me, every piece of my life falling apart, every memory of my parents tainted by the betrayal that I could not escape. I was left with the house, with the debt, with the ghost of my parents' love, but I was not free. I was not free at all. The days following the lawyer's call felt like an endless stream of shadows. I tried to move through them, tried to keep my composure, but I could feel the weight of everything bearing down on me. I had always thought of myself as strong. I had always thought that no matter what life threw at me, I could handle it. But now, standing in the ruins of my family's legacy, I realized that I had been wrong. I wasn't strong. I was a fool who had believed in the love that had been given to me, a fool who had trusted that sacrifice would mean something in the end. I couldn't stop thinking about the lawyer's words. Your sister knew. Those words echoed in my mind, cutting deeper with every passing hour. She knew about the debt, about the struggles they had faced, and she chose to do nothing. She had abandoned them, abandoned me, and now she was going to walk away with everything. It didn't make sense. I had been there, caring for them every day, while she had been living her life, oblivious to the sacrifices I had made. And yet, when it came time to inherit their world, it was her name on the will, her hands on the reins of their estate. I had been the one who had spent years tending to their needs, holding their hands as they grew frail, listening to their quiet pleas in the dead of night. I had been the one who had given up everything for them, and now she was the one who was going to take it all. The house, the money, the legacy, everything. I had been a caretaker, a daughter, a servant to their aging bodies, and now I was nothing. The house that I had loved, the house I had fought to keep intact, had become nothing more than a reminder of my failure. My parents had trusted me, but they had also left me a cruel gift, one that I could never escape. The debt, the secret, the betrayal. I had to know more. I had to understand why. I couldn't let this go, couldn't just accept it. I wasn't sure if I was looking for answers or for something I could use against her. Perhaps I wanted to see her, to confront her. Perhaps I wanted to make her feel the weight of her actions, to make her understand the pain she had caused. But I also knew that confronting her was futile. She wouldn't care. She never had. I went to the house that I had inherited, the one that had once been filled with life, with love, the house where I had cared for them, where they had laughed and cried, where they had grown old. Now it was just a shell, empty, cold. The silence in the house was deafening, the walls bearing the weight of memories that could never be erased. I walked through the rooms, touching the furniture they had loved, the pieces they had collected over the years. It all seemed so insignificant now. The photos on the walls, the trinkets on the shelves, the little things that had once held so much meaning, they were all just remnants of a past that had been ripped away from me. The love I had given them, the sacrifices I had made, meant nothing. I found myself in the living room, standing in front of my father's old recliner, the one he had spent countless hours sitting in, watching television, reading the newspaper, talking to me about the world. He had always been there, a steady presence in my life, a father who had loved me with everything he had. And yet, here I was, standing alone in this room, in this house, surrounded by his things. Tears filled my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I had no more tears left to cry. They had taken everything from me, my family, my love, my future, and now I was left with a debt I didn't know how to pay, a secret I didn't want to uncover, and a sister who had never cared. The anger surged inside me, hot and sharp. How could she do this? How could she be so cold, so indifferent to everything they had gone through? How could she take everything from me, knowing that I had been the one who had cared for them, who had loved them, who had given up my own life for theirs? I couldn't understand it. I couldn't accept it. I walked to the small study in the back of the house, the room where my father had spent hours going through his papers, working on the things that mattered to him. I had always loved that room. It had felt like his space, a place where he could retreat from the world, where he could be alone with his thoughts. I hadn't been in here since he passed, but now I needed to know more. I needed to understand what had happened. I opened the drawer of his desk, my hands trembling as I searched through the papers. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Perhaps a clue, perhaps something that would explain why they had done this to me, why they had left me with nothing. And then I found it, a letter, a simple letter, tucked away at the bottom of the drawer. It was addressed to my sister. My name was nowhere to be found on it. I opened it with shaking hands and began to read. The letter was a confession, a plea for forgiveness, a final message from my father to my sister, the one who had abandoned us. In the letter, my father explained the debt, the one that had been hidden from me, the one I had never known about. He spoke of his regret, of the choices he had made that had led to this point. He spoke of how he had always hoped she would come back, that she would help them, but that she had refused, and now in his final days, he had been forced to rely on me, the one who had always been there. He had trusted me, but he had also known that I was the one who could not bear the burden of the debt alone. I felt the world tilt beneath me as I read the words. My father had known. He had known about the debt, about the sacrifices I had made, but he had left me to deal with. And my sister, she had known too. She had chosen to walk away, to leave me with the burden, to let me carry it alone. The letter was a final apology, a final confession of guilt, but it did nothing to ease the pain. It did nothing to change the fact that she had taken everything from me. I folded the letter carefully, feeling the weight of it in my hands. It was a message I would never forget, a message that would haunt me forever. My father's last words had been a betrayal in themselves, and now I was left to deal with the aftermath. The weight of the letter lingered on my mind, heavy and suffocating, a constant reminder of everything I had lost, and everything I could never regain. The days blurred together as I moved through the house, the emptiness swallowing me whole. I no longer recognized the woman I saw in the mirror, the one who had once been so full of purpose, so dedicated to her family. Now I was just a shell, a hollow version of myself, broken and lost in the wake of betrayal. I tried to distract myself, tried to focus on something, anything that could pull me out of the darkness. I sorted through my parents' belongings, packing away their things, the remnants of their lives that no longer meant anything to me. I had once thought that these items would be a comfort, a way to hold on to them, to remember them the way they were before the disease took its toll, but now, they felt like nothing more than reminders of my own failure. The letter from my father had changed everything. It had told me the truth about the debt, about my sister, about everything I had been kept in the dark about, but it hadn't explained why. Why had they left me with nothing but the remnants of their lives? Why had they chosen her, the one who had abandoned them, over me, the one who had been there every step of the way? The anger I had been holding in began to rise again, hotter and sharper than before. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to make them understand how deeply I had been hurt, but there was no one left to hear me, no one left to explain the reasons behind their choices. My parents were gone, and my sister had disappeared long ago, leaving me to pick up the pieces of a life I could no longer recognize. It was then that I realized the depth of the betrayal. My father's letter had been an attempt to make things right, to explain his actions, but it only made the situation worse. The truth was out, but it didn't change anything. My sister had still walked away with everything, while I was left to deal with the consequences of their choice. I found myself standing in the living room, staring at the space where my parents had once sat together, laughing, talking, sharing their lives with each other. The silence in the room felt deafening. I could almost hear their voices, as if they were still here, still part of this world, but they weren't. They were gone, and I was left to carry the burden they had placed on me. I was left to clean up the mess they had made. The letter had given me a glimpse into their world, a world I had never fully understood. It had shown me the pain they had kept hidden from me, the secrets they had buried deep within themselves, but it had also shown me something else, something that I hadn't realized until that very moment. The debt wasn't just financial. It wasn't just a matter of money. It was the weight of the choices they had made, the choices that had torn our family apart. My sister had been a part of that, and so had I. We had both played a role in the unraveling of the life we had once shared. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine as I realized the truth. My parents had chosen me to bear the burden of their mistakes. They had trusted me to take care of them, to manage their lives as they had grown older, and in doing so, They had placed their entire world on my shoulder. They had kept the truth from me, hoping I wouldn't see the cracks, hoping I wouldn't uncover the secrets they had worked so hard to bury. But I had seen them. I had seen it all. And now I was left with nothing. No family, no sister, no parent, just the wreckage of a life that had once been filled with love, with hope, with dreams of a future that could never be. The anger inside me grew until it felt like I might explode. I wanted to confront my sister, to demand an explanation, to make her see the damage she had done. But I knew it wouldn't make a difference. She had already made her choice. She had already walked away from us, from everything that mattered. The truth was that my sister had never cared. She had never cared about our parents, about me, or about the sacrifices we had made for each other. She had always been the one to escape, the one who lived her life without a second thought for anyone else. And now she was the one who would walk away with everything. I sank into the chair that had once been my father's, the chair where he had sat for so many years, his eyes filled with love and pride as he looked at his family. But that was before the disease took hold of him, before he had become a shadow of the man he once was, before the lies and the secrets had torn us apart. I closed my eyes, trying to shut out the memories, the pain, the anger, but they wouldn't leave. They were all around me, clinging to me like a second skin, suffocating me with their weight. The truth had finally come to light, but it didn't set me free. It only made the chains tighter, the burden heavier. I couldn't escape it. I couldn't escape the fact that I had given everything for a family that had never truly seen me, never truly understood the sacrifices I had made. I had been a daughter, a caretaker, a servant to their needs, and in the end it had all been for nothing. My sister had taken everything, and I had nothing left. No legacy, no family, no future, just the ruins of a life that had once meant something. And that, I realized, was the true betrayal, the fact that I had given everything, and in return, I had been left with nothing. The days passed in a haze of numbness, each one bleeding into the next. I moved through life as though I were a ghost, walking through the motions without ever truly living. The house, the one that had once held all the warmth of family, now felt like a cold shell. I found myself standing in the same spots, over and over again, wondering how it had come to this. I had spent so much of my life giving, loving, sacrificing, and now I was left with nothing but the remnants of a past that no longer made sense. I had always been the one who stayed, the one who kept the pieces of our family together, even when everything else was falling apart. But now I couldn't shake the feeling that all my sacrifices had been in vain. My sister, the one who had walked away from us so many years ago, had come back to claim everything. She had taken the inheritance, the legacy, the house, everything that should have been mine. And I was left with the pain, the anger, the weight of their choices. It wasn't just the inheritance. It wasn't just the house, or the money, or the things they had left behind. It was the fact that they had chosen her over. They had trusted me with their lives, with their care, with their fading years, and yet they had left her everything. She had taken it all, without lifting a finger, without ever looking back. While I had stayed, I had given everything for them, and now I was the one who was left empty-handed. I didn't know how to move forward. I didn't know how to let go of the anger, the resentment, the bitterness that had taken root inside me. It was like a poison in my veins, eating away at me from the inside out. I tried to bury it, tried to ignore it, but it was always there, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting to rise up and consume me. There were moments when I thought I could forgive them, when I thought that maybe, just maybe, I could let go of the past and move on. But every time I tried, the pain was too much. Every time I thought I had made peace with their decisions, I was reminded of the betrayal, of the years I had spent caring for them, loving them, and being there for them when they needed me most. And now I was left with nothing but their empty promises and their broken trust. I tried to reach out to my sister. I thought maybe if I confronted her, if I made her understand the hurt she had caused, maybe it would make a difference. Maybe I could find some sense of closure, some sense of justice. But when I finally spoke to her, her response was not what I had hoped for. It was colder than I had expected, more detached. She didn't understand. She didn't care. I didn't know what you wanted from me, she had said when I called. I didn't want anything to do with their mess. I have my own life to live. You were always the one they could count on. I don't know why you're so upset. It's not my fault they left everything to me. Her words cut through me like a blade. It wasn't that she was wrong. It was that she was so indifferent, so unaware of the pain she had caused. She didn't understand the sacrifices I had made, the years I had spent holding everything together, making sure they had everything they needed. She didn't understand because she had never been there, and now, she was the one walking away with everything. It felt like the ultimate injustice, but in her words, there was something else, a realization, a painful truth I had been avoiding. She didn't care, she never had. The years I had spent hoping for her return, hoping for some form of reconciliation, had been wasted. She had made her choice a long time ago, and now, she was living with the consequences of that choice, while I was left to deal with the wreckage. I hung up the phone, feeling empty, not just because of what she had said, but because of the realization that I had been holding on to something that was never meant to be. I had been holding on to the idea of family, the idea of love, the idea that sacrifice would be enough, but it wasn't. It wasn't enough for them. It wasn't enough for her, and it wasn't enough for me. The truth stung, but it also set something inside me free. I had spent so many years trying to fix things, trying to make everyone happy, trying to be the one who held everything together, but I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep carrying this weight, this anger, this resentment. It was too much. I was drowning under the pressure of it all. I walked to the window and stared out at the quiet street. The world outside seemed so peaceful, so untouched by the turmoil I felt inside. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, the sun setting behind them, casting long shadows on the ground. I wanted to feel that peace. I wanted to be able to breathe again, without the weight of my parents' betrayal hanging over me, but I didn't know how. The phone call had been a wake-up call. I couldn't keep waiting for something that would never come. I couldn't keep holding on to a family that had never truly been mine. The love I had given them, the sacrifices I had made, had been enough, but it was never going to be enough for them, and I had to accept that. The anger, the hurt, the sense of betrayal, it would always be a part of me, but I couldn't let it control me anymore. I couldn't let it define who I was. I had spent too long letting their choices dictate my life. It was time to take back control. It was time to let go. The house, the inheritance, the debt, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was finding a way to move forward. What mattered was finding a way to heal, to rebuild my life from the ashes of the past. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I sat in the living room for hours, the silence pressing in on me like an oppressive weight. The house felt different now, more like a museum of memories than a home. It was full of their things, the remnants of their lives, but they weren't here. The echoes of their voices, their laughter, had faded, leaving only the hollow hum of my thoughts. I ran my fingers over the edges of a family photo frame on the mantelpiece, the picture of us all at a holiday gathering, years ago, before the sickness, before the years of sacrifice, before the distance between me and my sister had become too great. In the photo, we all looked so happy, so unaware of what was to come. The weight of resentment lingered inside me, a heaviness that I could never seem to shake. It wasn't just my sister. It wasn't just the house or the money. It was the realization that all those years of selflessness, of giving everything I had amounted to nothing. I had been the one who stayed. I had been the one who had given up my own future for them. I had put their needs above mine, day after day, year after year, never questioning the price I was paying. And now, it seemed like that price had been too high. I had been left with nothing. No acknowledgement, no gratitude, no recognition for the sacrifices I had made. Just the weight of my sister's indifference and the house I had inherited. A house filled with memories that I couldn't escape. A house that had become a prison to my grief. I had tried to move forward, tried to bury the anger that gnawed at me from the inside, but it was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. Every time I looked at the house, every time I walked through the rooms that had once been filled with my parents' presence, I felt the weight of their choices. I felt the sting of betrayal. It wasn't just the fact that my sister had inherited everything. It wasn't just the money or the house. It was the fact that they had never truly seen me. They had never seen what I had given up, what I had sacrificed. They had never understood the toll it had taken on me. I had been the one to shoulder the burden of their care, of their lives, and they had left me with nothing but the hollow echo of their absence. But as the days went on, I began to realize something: the resentment, the anger, the bitterness. It wasn't just hurting them, it was hurting me. It was keeping me chained to a past that I couldn't change, to a family that had never truly been mine. I had spent so much time focused on their betrayal that I had lost sight of myself, of my own future. I couldn't keep living like this. I couldn't keep holding on to a past that no longer had a place in my life. The house, the inheritance, it didn't matter. It was just a symbol of everything I had lost, of everything I had given up. I needed to let go. I needed to find a way to free myself from the chains of my resentment. It was a difficult realization. Letting go felt like the ultimate defeat, like admitting that everything I had done had been in vain. But I knew, deep down, that holding on to this anger would only continue to break me. It would continue to poison my soul, to keep me locked in a place of pain and bitterness. And I couldn't do that anymore. I began the long process of sorting through my parents' things, packing up the memories they had left behind. It was painful, more painful than I had imagined, but it was also liberating. Each box I packed, each item I placed carefully inside, felt like one less weight on my shoulders. The house began to feel lighter, as if the burden of my past was finally being lifted, piece by piece. I had no idea what the future would hold. I didn't know where I would go or what I would do next. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. I felt the possibility of something new. I wasn't sure how to find it, how to move forward, but I knew that I couldn't keep living in the shadow of my past. I couldn't keep letting the mistakes of my parents, the choices of my sister, define who I was. I went through the motions of my days, slowly packing up the house, one box at a time. I found old letters, old photographs, mementos of a time when everything seemed simpler, when family meant something more. I thought about the love that had once filled this house, the love I had given freely, without hesitation. And I thought about how that love had been repaid with betrayal. But even in the midst of that, I realized something important. I had loved them. I had given everything for them. And that love, no matter how it had been received, no matter how it had been discarded, was still mine. It was still a part of me. And no matter what had happened, no one could take that away. I didn't know what came next. I didn't know how to move forward from here. But for the first time, I understood that I didn't have to keep carrying this burden. I didn't have to keep holding on to the resentment, to the anger, to the pain. I could let go. I could start again. And maybe, just maybe, I could learn to forgive. Not them, not my sister, not the family that had let me down, but myself. It had been weeks since the day I decided to let go. Weeks of sorting through the remnants of my past, packing away the memories that had once meant so much to me. I had thrown myself into the task, filling box after box with things I no longer wanted to see, things that had become nothing but symbols of a life I could no longer claim. The house was slowly emptying out, piece by piece, and with every item I packed away, it felt like I was also packing away my grief, my anger, my sense of betrayal. But even as the house began to clear, even as the memories began to fade into the boxes, there was one thing I couldn't escape: the truth that she would return. I had known it all along. My sister was coming back, and when she did, it would be with her usual indifference, her usual sense of entitlement. The day she arrived, I was sitting in the living room, staring at the empty space where their pictures used to hang, where their laughter used to echo. I had just finished packing up the last of my mother's things when the doorbell rang. I stood, my heart pounding in my chest. My sister's voice had not graced these walls in years, and yet I could hear her now outside, calling to me as if it were just another casual visit, as if nothing had changed. I took a deep breath and walked to the door. When I opened it, there she stood, my sister, the same woman who had walked away from us without a second thought, the same woman who had left me to carry the weight of our parents' care, the same one who had walked in now to take what was left. Her smile was cold, rehearsed, like a mask she put on when she needed something. And today, she needed something. She needed everything. "Hi," she said, stepping past me without waiting for an invitation. "It's been a while, hasn't it?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words stuck in my throat, lodged there by the weight of the years, by the resentment that had festered between us, unspoken and unresolved. She looked around, her eyes scanning the now empty house, as if it were nothing more than a piece of property. She didn't seem to notice the emptiness in the rooms, the quiet that had taken over the place. She didn't seem to care. She had come back for what she felt entitled to, not to mourn, not to remember, just to claim. "I see you've been cleaning up," she said, her voice casual as if we were discussing nothing more than the weather. "I guess it's time to move on, right?" I felt a surge of anger rise in my chest, but I held it back. I had spent so long trying to let go of this. I had spent so many days crying, screaming into the silence, hoping for a resolution, a way to move forward. But now, standing here with her, I realized that nothing would change. She had come to take everything, just as she always had. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, barely able to hold the weight of the question. She raised an eyebrow, surprised by my bluntness. "What do you mean? What do I want?" "I just came to see the place," she said, shrugging as if she were talking about a house that belonged to someone else. I felt the walls closing in around me, the suffocating realization that this was it. This was the moment I had been dreading, the moment I had feared for so long. She had returned, but she hadn't come back for family. She hadn't come back for reconciliation. She had come back for what was hers. "You're here for the house, aren't you?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of sorrow and fury. "You've always been here for what's yours." Her smile faltered for just a moment, and then it returned, colder than before. "I don't know why you're making this so complicated," she said, stepping toward me. "Mom and Dad left everything to me. That's how it is. That's how it was always going to be. You knew that." "No," I replied sharply, my heart racing in my chest. "I didn't know that. I didn't know they would leave everything to you. I didn't know that all my years of caring for them would mean nothing." She sighed, rolling her eyes as if she were tired of the conversation already. "I don't understand why you're so upset about this. I came back to take care of things. It's what they wanted, and it's what I'm doing. I didn't ask for this responsibility, but someone had to take it. You're not exactly in a position to complain." I stood frozen, every word she said cutting through me like a blade. She was right. I had no position to complain. She had taken everything, every little thing that had once been mine, and I had nothing left but the shards of a broken family. She had abandoned us, and now she was here to claim the prize. The anger inside me flared. "You never came back. Not when they needed you. Not when they were dying. You didn't care about them. You didn't care about me, and now you think you have the right to everything." "I didn't have to care about their dying. Okay, I had a life," she snapped, her voice sharp. "I had my own things to worry about. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know anything. I know that you walked away. I know that you made your life and left us behind. And now you're back, because you think you deserve everything." The room fell silent. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Her face was a mask of indifference, but I could see it, her eyes full of guilt and resentment, betraying her calm exterior. She knew the truth. Deep down, she knew that she had abandoned us, and yet she stood there, acting like nothing had happened, acting like this was normal. I felt the walls closing in around me again, but this time I didn't try to fight it. I had spent so many years fighting for them, fighting for us, but there was no more fight left. There was nothing left to salvage. "Do what you need to do," I said, my voice low, calm. Take the house. Take whatever you think you deserve. But I'm done." Her eyes flickered with surprise, but she didn't say anything more. She just turned, walking away, leaving me standing there in the ruins of my family. And I knew, in that moment, that I was finally free, free from the weight of their expectations, free from the guilt that had consumed me. I wasn't responsible for them anymore. I wasn't responsible for her. I had done everything I could, and now it was time to let go. I had done it. The anger, the resentment, the bitterness that had once held me captive. It was all slipping away, piece by piece. I had let go of the weight that had crushed me for so long. The house, the inheritance, the betrayal. They no longer had the power to define me. They no longer had the power to control my future. My sister had left. She had taken what she came for, and I had let her. I had watched her walk away, as cold and indifferent as ever. And for the first time I felt no anger toward her. I felt nothing. I realized then that it wasn't just the house that had bound me to the past. It was everything. Every wound, every moment I had spent holding on to the hurt. But it wasn't just the past that had kept me tethered. It was my own inability to forgive myself, to let go of the guilt that I had carried all these years. Guilt for staying, for sacrificing my own happiness for the love I thought I was given. Guilt for thinking that I needed approval from them, from her. But in that moment, standing in the empty house, surrounded by the echoes of the past, I understood that forgiveness wasn't about them, it was about me. And so I let go. I packed up the final box. The house was empty now, nothing but hollow walls, and the faint smell of what had once been. The last remnants of my past, of my parents, were gone. I stood in the center of the room, feeling the weight of years lift from my shoulders, leaving me lighter, freer than I had ever been. It was time to move on. I didn't know what my future would look like. I didn't know where I was going, or what I was going to do. But for the first time, I didn't care. I was free to make my own choices, free to live my own life. I could create something new, something that belonged to me. The next day, I left the house. I left the town. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I drove to a place I had never been, a place where I didn't know anyone, a place where the past couldn't follow me. And there I began again. I found a job. I made new friends. I built a life from the ground up. Slowly but surely, I began to heal. It wasn't easy. There were days when the past came rushing back, when the pain threatened to pull me under. But I held on. I held on to the lessons I had learned, the strength I had found in letting go. Years passed, and life moved forward. I created new memories, made new connections, and found joy in the things I had once thought were lost forever. I grew stronger, more confident. I no longer defined myself by the betrayals of my past. I defined myself by what I had built, by the person I had become. And then, one day, I received a letter. I hadn't heard from my sister in years. I had long since stopped wondering what had become of her, stopped hoping that we might ever reconcile. But there it was, in my mailbox, her name, neatly written on the envelope. My heart skipped a beat, but I didn't feel the anger, the dread I had once felt. I simply felt curiosity. I opened it carefully, my fingers trembling slightly as I unfolded the paper. It was short, simple, and to the point. "I need you to know that I'm sorry. I was wrong. I should have been there. I should have come back. I shouldn't have left you to carry it all. I've realized that now, too late. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know the truth. I've come to terms with my own mistake. I hope you can too." I read the letter twice, my heart aching with an emotion I couldn't quite place. There was no anger anymore, no bitterness. There was only the overwhelming realization that despite everything, I had been right all along. I had loved, I had given, and I had done it for the right reasons. My sister's apology, no matter how long it took to come, no longer held any weight over me. I had already let go. I stood by the window, looking out at the world I had built, at the life I had reclaimed for myself. The weight of the past was no longer on my shoulders. The ghosts of my parents, of my sister, no longer had a hold on me. I had let them go, and in doing so, I had finally set myself free, and then, just as I began to feel a sense of peace, the letter fell from my hands, forgotten on the floor. A single line, written in my sister's hand, caught my eye at the bottom of the page. "I've found something. Something you need to see. You may not want to know, but you have to." I froze. My heart stopped. What could she have found? What truth was she hiding from me all these years? I had let go. I had moved on, but something deep inside me whispered, what if there was still more to this story? What if the final betrayal hadn't been the end, but the beginning of something far darker, far more twisted? I couldn't escape it. I had to know. And that, I realized, was the moment everything changed. But what about you? Have you ever been left behind, only to discover that the truth was far darker than you ever imagined? Share your thoughts, your experiences, and let's talk about how family, love, and betrayal shape our lives. Leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more gripping stories. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.